Season 7 of Sun Coaches Podcast is proudly brought to you by Titan Sensor. Season 7. That was my number in high school, so maybe this will be lucky for us. We'll see. You know, I've learned over time that when somebody's talking about something you really don't want to talk about, you just can always throw in there, hey, I knew this guy once, and then just pretty much make up whatever you want to, and they won't listen to it. They'll get off track, and you don't have to talk about the uncomfortable thing anymore. Coach, like we do every week, tell everybody where you grew up and where you're from. Sun Coaches Podcast, where not everybody has a funny story, but everybody has a story. Hope you enjoy Season 7 of Sun Coaches Podcast. Sun Coaches is proud to partner with Titan Sensor for Season 6 and 7. Titan is made in the USA, proudly founded and based in Texas. When you connect with Titan, you are not alone. You can collaborate and share templates with other coaches across the country to build reports and foster competition. Used by programs such as State 6A Georgia State champion Grayson High School, Titan can tailor a package to fit your needs. The eye in the sky never lies. Improve your team's performance with Titan. Welcome to Sun Coaches Podcast, Season 7, and today I'm excited to be joined by an old friend of mine that's been doing it a long time, been a lot of great places. He's currently the head coach of the Warren County Screaming Blue Devils, Coach Stephen Simpson. Thanks for being on with me.
I appreciate you having us. I appreciate what you do for high school football in the state of Georgia.
Well, Coach, I know, most people don't know that the mascot is the Screaming Blue Devils. They just think it's the Blue Devils. But I started at Aquinas, and we were in the region with Warren County back in the day. And, there was some good battles there. But where did you actually grow up and go to high school?
I'm originally from Milledgeville. Went to John Milledge Academy, a little private school in Milledgeville. And, I guess our biggest claim to fame at John Milledge was probably J.T. Wall, who everybody's heard about. And he's doing a great job coaching there. And I was very fortunate there to be coached by what I consider a legend. He didn't make your series, but Bruce Lane, he's a legend in the GISA. And so that's where I'm from originally.
Well, I'm going to have another Legend series, so I'll have to get his information from you because I've had so many people, reach out and be like, well, what about so-and-so? What about so-and-so? And I'm like, hey, guys, I don't know if y'all understand how hard it is to round up them old dudes because they are not usually technology. And I'm like, it's just a phone call. And, but I really enjoyed doing that. And I remember Coach Lane, he was at Augusta Christian at one time, wasn't he?
He was, and he's still actually coaching. He's at Trinity in Dublin, doing a great job down there. But he's been in South Carolina and Texas and several different places, won some state championships. He's still at it. Been doing it for a while. That's
awesome. I got to get him on for sure. So you went to John Milledge. What all did you play when you were in school there?
Well, I played football. I dabbled in basketball a little bit and realized that wasn't for me. And played baseball. And I tell everybody I threw track. I didn't really run it, but I threw shot and discus, so a little bit of everything.
Yeah, and that's something that kids these days, they're starting to specialize. It's hard to get those multi-sport athletes like, we had growing up.
Yeah, it's the pressure from parents to get college scholarships and what they see on Saturdays and Sundays. And, the kids just don't want to do multiple sports unless you're in a really small school. And, Warren County, our kids don't have a choice but to play multiple sports if we're going to offer different things. So we still have it in Warrenton, but you don't see it as much anymore.
Well, did you have a chance to play college ball anywhere, or did you just go to school?
I did. I was fortunate enough to be in the right place at the right time, I guess. Coach Nunn over at GMC at the junior college there needed a long snapper, and I happened to have that skill. And so I went over to the junior college there in Milledgeville, played for a couple years and learned a lot of football. I had some great coaches on that staff. Robert Nunn was the head coach, of course, and went on with the Dolphins and the Redskins, Packers, and all kinds of people in the NFL. And Scott Sloan, Chad Lunsford, Jeff Tatum. There were a bunch of great coaches there on that staff. Bert Williams, who unfortunately has passed away now, but a lot of really good guys there to learn a lot of good football from.
So when you were in school, did you know you were going to be a coach, or did you want to do something else?
Well, it's funny, but when I was when I was in high school, I always wanted to go find a job where I could make plenty of money, be an accountant, be an engineer, be something like that. But my high school head coach had a really big influence in my life. And when I was fortunate enough to play in college, you know, being around those guys and seeing those coaches and learning, I made a decision during, I guess, my sophomore season at GMC that I wanted to be a teacher and a coach and try to give back like my coaches have given back to me.
Yeah, it's amazing to me how many guys that I've talked to that somebody had an impact on them as a young person and influenced them to get into the profession and go into teaching and coaching. And it's just awesome to me to think that, you know, we're kind of paying it forward or keeping it going, so to speak, with, you know, what the time they took and poured into us, we turn around and pour it back into other people.
Oh yeah. I mean, you know, without some of my coaches, I probably would be in jail by now or something. But, you know, I just hope that somewhere along the way I can make an impact on a young man like my high school coaches and my college coaches made on me. You know, it's what it's all about. Wins and losses are great, but if you can impact a kid and help them through a tough situation or make them a better human being, that's what it's all about.
Absolutely. So what was your first teaching and coaching gig, and was it in college or had you gotten out?
Well, when I finished playing ball, I decided I wanted to be in coaching, so I got into community coaching, and I was at Southland Academy in Americus for a year. Coach Lane, my high school coach, had gone down there to Southland Academy, and I went down there and worked with him for a year, and then ended up, due to some family health issues, moved back to Milledgeville and coached at Georgia Military at the prep school for a couple of years while I finished up at Georgia College. And, you know, got to see a lot of different things. And, you know, like you talk about, I learned how to paint lines and wash laundry and, you know, break down film and do it all by hand and copy those VHS tapes back in the day. But, you know, once I finished school and graduated, my first teaching and coaching job was actually at Briarwood Academy in Warrenton. And, quite an experience. It was me and one other guy, coached middle school and high school together. Jimmy Barnett, he's since passed away. But, you know, when you're in those kind of situations, you have to learn a lot of different things. And I think that really sort of set me on the path to be able to progress through the profession. You know, you have to know a little bit about everything and learn a little bit about everything to go from there. But after I left Briarwood, I went to Wilkinson, got into public school there and coached at Wilkinson, and then eventually ended up at Dublin with Coach Holmes. That was a great experience. I happened to be down there in 2006 when they won the state championship, coached linebackers. You know, those that don't know Coach Holmes, he's a legend, but he's probably the best X's and O's guy I've ever been around. It'd be either him or Coach Winslet. So that was a great experience in Dublin.
So how long were you at Brentwood?
I was at Briarwood for 2 years.
I'm sorry, Briarwood. I get the B Woods mixed up.
Brookwood,
Brentwood, Briarwood.
If you're in the GISA school, throw Woods behind it. You probably got it right. But I was there for 2 years before I went on to Wilkinson and got into public realm. Finally got my certification and stuff straightened out. Got into the public school world for the retirement and insurance benefits and things like that. And then I did a year at Wilkinson before I got to Dublin.
Okay. And how long were you at Dublin?
I was only there the 2006 school year, and 2006, 2007 school year. You know, like I say, I learned a lot, probably thought that I knew more than I did. Friend of mine got the head football job back at Georgia Military at the high school and convinced me to come back to Milledgeville. I was still living in Milledgeville and driving, had a small child, so I thought it was a good opportunity to go be a defensive coordinator. And, you know, great experience. I learned on the fly. I got to make mistakes and figure them out on my own as a coordinator. But I can tell you, going from winning the state championship or tying Charleston for the state championship to 0-10 was quite a humbling experience.
Yeah, it'll do that. I remember going. My wife and I were at that game when y'all tied Charlton, and we sat on the hill at the Shamrock Bowl, and Bill Clark was coaching at Charlton at the time, And he was a buddy of mine, so I was like, let's go watch it. And we didn't have kids, so we've only been married 4 years at the time, so we just kind of rolled on over to Dublin and watched that game. And man, what a game!
Great atmosphere, and I unfortunately I think we lose a little bit of that atmosphere by playing the state championships in the dome. I mean, I know the dome is a great experience for the kids, but there's nothing like, walking out. I work with the long snappers and the punters and stuff, and you walk out 2.5 hours before the game, and it's a packed stadium and standing ovation, people going nuts. There was nowhere you could put anybody else. I mean, people were just packed in there everywhere they could fit. It was a great environment, great experience for a state championship game, and I think we missed that a little bit now.
I agree, 1,000%. I mean, I liked it when the semis were in the dome. If you want to give them some kind of experience or whatever, but the way the thing makes money now, it'll never go back, but I wish it would. There's a lot of things that I wish was the way it used to be, season length, playoffs, all those things, but that's another story for another time. So you go back to GMC and you're the defensive coordinator, and you said you got to learn on the fly and make mistakes. How important do you think, working for somebody that allowed you to do that was, in developing and shaping you into the head coach you eventually became?
I think it was crucial that without that opportunity, I don't know that I would be able to be the coach I am now. And not that I'm a great coach by any means, but, when you're at a place like GMC and you're trying to take your limited student population and figure out a way to make it work, and, you got 24, 25 guys on the team, and football is really not their number one priority, you have to be able to sit down and really evaluate film and evaluate talent and evaluate how you got to attack different people. And so, making those mistakes and learning, by making those mistakes, it has prepared me, it puts you in a different level of detail that you have to pay attention to sometimes when you're not superior athletically. And I think without that valuable experience, I wouldn't have been able to become the head coach and handle all the different things that you got handling, because GMC is a little different experience for people. You don't know it's a military school. Those kids, if they don't wear the uniform right, they've got to go back after school and re-inspections, and you got a parade that might pop up, and, hey, coach, your kids are not going to be able to be in the field house until 4:30 when this parade's over, or, some dignitaries coming, and all of a sudden it changes your plan. So it makes you have to be flexible, and learning by making mistakes makes you be flexible as well. So, it was a good experience.
Well, I think something else that helps in that situation too is that when you become a head coach, you remember being allowed to do that as an assistant, and you kind of treat your assistant coaches a little bit differently than maybe you would have if you hadn't had that experience, if that makes any sense. Like my first, I worked at Aquinas, and Mike Laney was the head baseball coach. I worked with him. He was also the defensive coordinator. Well, he kind of let me have input, and he would say, well, what do you think? And if we try it, and if it worked, he's like, hey, good call. And if it didn't, well, we ain't never doing that again. but then when I got to sit in the big chair, I kind of thought about, regardless of the sport, I kind of thought about that too. I was like, well, let them do what they do, because you can't do everything.
You're 100% right on that, and I do that. I try to get all my coaches' input. Sometimes I probably ask for it too much, but I feel like if you let the coaches have their input and they're vested in it, if it works, great call. They get the credit. If it doesn't work, it's on me. I'm the one who's got to make those decisions. But I do feel like my head coaches that I work for at GMC allow me to do that. Definitely has shaped the way I work as a head coach.
So
Definitely.
How long were you the DC at GMC?
I was a DC for 6 years. Was there through two different head coaches. And then I became the head coach at GMC in year 7, I guess. And so, that was a different animal, seeing it from a different side. I hear you tell people a lot of times it's like drinking from a fire hose, and it really is, especially at a place like that. You think you're prepared, but you're never prepared for all the things that you get to see. And, like you say, sometimes sitting in the big chair, those parent conversations are totally different than they are standing on the sideline on Friday night. I can't say go see that guy anymore.
Well, the thing that amazes me is for you to say that when you were there as an assistant for 6-7 years, and you still didn't feel like you were ready, even though you knew the kids had drill and you knew that you had to be flexible, you knew all that stuff. It still doesn't really. I mean, the only way you learn is by doing it.
Exactly. It's like I got the trial and error side on the defensive side, and thought I was prepared. And you get there and something pops up, or example, one Friday night or Friday afternoon, I had 3 kids that were throwing ice in the cafeteria, and I find out at 2:45 they're going to be suspended for 3 days, and I got a game that night. There's 2 starting guards and a starting wingback. Not good. So when I wasn't the head coach, I was like, well, hey, what you going to do about that? And now it's like, what am I going to do about that? Those kinds of things. So I always got to be prepared.
That's insane. So how long were you the head coach at GMC?
I was the head coach for 6 years there before I left and went to Warrenton. So good run there, but, eventually just, I guess, burn out and wanting to do something different. And Sherrod Freeman was the head coach at Warren County, and he'd been trying to convince me to come to Warrenton for several years, and I knew Warrenton had really good athletes, and finally he convinced me, and I went over in 2019 as his defensive coordinator. And again, another great experience. Finally I could take a step back and just be that coordinator, position coach, and somebody said something off the line, didn't like what was going on. I was like, hey, you need to go talk to that guy. He's the one that can answer your question.
Yeah, it's my favorite response to everything.
Yeah. So it let me recharge the batteries a little bit and, got things going in the right direction, and hadn't been to the playoffs since I had left Dublin in 2006. And so I got to Warrenton and, we put it together and ended up, that was the last year, I believe, of the old power ranking system. And we barely snuck in and were able to win, a couple games on the road and make it to the quarters, which was huge for that community and huge for the program, and, and everything that year. And it was great. And I thought things were going to be really good, and we were getting stuff rolling and getting the weight room rolling. And all of a sudden COVID hit, shut us down.
No, man.
So,
yeah, that was bad.
Yeah.
Especially when you're
rough.
in a small program in a small rural town community where your closest hospital is probably Augusta.
Yes, they finally built one in Thompson, a little outpatient type thing. But yeah, closest one's Augusta, 35 minutes. So it was different, but we made it through it. And that during the COVID time, Coach Freeman actually took the head football job at Bryan County, and I was worried that I was going to have to be trying to find a job in the middle of COVID, and the superintendent and principal, felt like I was the right fit, and I slid right on into that head coaching position and have been there ever since. So this is year 6 as a head coach at Warren and year 7 overall. So been able to be fairly successful there.
So after 13 years at GMC as an assistant and a head coach, you go to Warrenton. Now you've been there for 6 or 7 years. What are some things that once you took over the head coaching job, and both times getting promoted from within, which speaks to the relationships you had with not only the kids in the community, but the leadership and the administration. What were some things that you did a little differently this go around at Warren County to start off than you did your first head coaching job?
Well, I think both schools were being really small. Warren way smaller than GMC. I felt like at GMC a little bit, we spent a lot of time recruiting the hallways, trying to keep all our kids and get kids to come out. I don't want to say begging kids, but I felt like almost sometimes you were begging kids. And I felt like at Warren, I wasn't going to do that. And, good thing is I don't have to. The kids in Warrenton, they want to play ball. We laugh and joke that a lot of years we have 50% of the male population on the team, which is pretty good. But I would say the one thing that I probably did a little bit differently was I tried to hire good people and let them do their job more so than than I did at GMC. At GMC, I probably micromanaged a little bit too much because I was worried about everything just because that school environment's a little bit different. But in Warrenton, a lot of our coaches that are in the school system are from Warrenton. So I leaned on those guys a lot more for community relationships, helping build relationships with kids, families, whatever, more so than maybe I did at GMC. But football's football. The weight room's the weight room. You got to get in there and you got to get after it. And, from that standpoint, probably not a whole lot different. It was more about how we went about building relationships, I guess I would say.
So you basically stay in the same region, or at least you're in the same part of the state, so you're familiar with the region that you're in.
Right.
And traditionally, it's been a very tough region for all sports, but football especially. You told me that next week you're off this week. You got Lincoln County next week. Started the season off playing 4 really good schools, and Burke County being one of them. And it's just hard to fill those non-region games when you're located where you're at and surrounded by regions that are as large as they are.
Yeah, I mean it is, and Warrenton, we're blessed. We're talented. We don't have a lot of numbers, but we've got good talent. So we play some tough teams early on to try to prepare us for our region. Lincoln's traditionally a power. Washington Wilkes traditionally one of the powers. Green for the last couple of years has been up there in the top of the state, and so, you got to prepare yourself for those games. You don't want to, the first time you walk into for lack of a better way to put it, a fist fight be going into Lincoln County or Greene County. Those are games that, from the opening whistle to the final horn, that it's going to be a brawl. It's going to be a fight. It's going to be good football, hard nosed, rural kids just getting after it. And so we had to try to prepare ourselves, and didn't really come out on top in a lot of those situations, but improved each week and feel like we've prepared ourselves for the region. So, but you're right. It's hard to get teams to come play in Warrenton. I can promise you.
Well, and Warren, the success y'all have had there between Coach Freeman and yourself, and then just traditionally, Warren County's just, you got enough athletes that the bigger schools are like, I don't want to deal with that. And then a lot of the small, the schools your size or even just the classification above you, they don't want none of that smoke. So you're going all over the place trying to find games to fill out that schedule.
Yeah, I mean, we played Morgan, which is they played in the state quarters last year in AAA or AA. Played Burke, played in the state championship last year in AA. So we've had to travel a little bit. I'm sort of concerned with the power rankings coming out, how that's going to affect scheduling a little bit next year. So it should be really interesting, but it is what it is, and we don't mind traveling. We don't mind playing anybody. That's one thing I'll say about our little community and our players is they're not scared to go try to battle anybody. But you do have to be careful and understand that when you got 24, 25 guys, you got to be careful who you take on and can't get beat up and broke up too bad before you get to the region.
Yeah, you were telling me you just now starting to get some of your kids back healthy from your 7th quarterback.
Yeah, we played 7 different kids at quarterback due to injuries and different things, and like I say, our kids, they keep responding, they keep coming back, they keep battling, and that's all you can ask of them. And we're starting to get some guys healthy, and we're starting to figure some things out, and we're really excited about where we feel like we can end up. Lincoln will be that test for us. If you want to win a region championship or you want to make a deep run in the playoffs, you're going to have to go through Lincoln at some point, and so we're going to find that out next Friday night.
Well, and just, that just speaks to you learning earlier in your career about being flexible and flexibility. I'm sure you didn't start the year off. I know we saw y'all at the Putnam OTA and went against each other for a couple of racks. And I know at the time you weren't thinking that you were going to get down to your 7th different quarterback.
No, by no means. But, like you said, it's part about the flexibility and, small schools, when you lose one, you really lose 4 or 5 different positions, and it goes to show, the quality of coaching I have on my coaching staff and the type of kids we have that can continue to be resilient and come back from those things. And, you know, it's something to be proud of. You know, we're 4-4 right now. The record might not be exactly what we want it to be, but the fact that our kids didn't fold the tent when things weren't going great just shows you what kind of character they have. And I'm really proud of those guys.
Yeah, that is fantastic. I mean, nobody plans on the seventh quarterback. Like you said, it's hard to find 7 kids that can catch a snap and just hand it off to somebody. I take the young kids over with me the other day just to find them something to do, and I couldn't believe that, you know, kids that are athletic and that claim to, you know, grow up playing football can't take a shotgun snap from somebody. You know, you take it for granted. Like, you just think, anybody can get back there and do it. And then you start watching and go, all right, send me the next one. You know?
I tell you what, the toughest thing to find in Warren County is a kicker and a punter. You know, I tell people all the time, the only reason we have goalposts is for the visitors. But, you know, it's an experience every time we have to try to punt or kick. But we got guys that keep doing it and trying to get better at it. So that's all you can ask for.
Yeah, we've had the same kind of discussions. Matter of fact, today before practice, I got out there and I asked our field goal kicker, I said, can you drop kick the ball? And bless his heart, he punted it. Oh, he said, well, yeah, coach, I'm the punter. I drop it and kick it every time I punt. And I'm like, no, baby, drop, like, let it hit the ground and kick it. And he was like, so let it hit the ground first and kick it. I said, yeah, kind of at the same time. And I said, here, look. So my 53-year-old buck gets out there. I said, I'll show you. And I'm standing like, you know, where you would kick an extra point. And lo and behold, I drop kick it to the uprights. And I went, see, that would count in a game. And the other kid goes, I told you could let the ball bounce one time and kick it. And he's like, I'm going to try that, coach. And I'm thinking to myself, well, it ain't going to hurt. I mean, it's not, you know, don't tell the head coach I said we need to drop kick extra points, but you're right. In rural communities, trying to find a kicker is definitely something serious. So how does, you know, one thing you hit on that I want people to understand, and because a lot of guys, especially these young cats, they'll go off to big programs and all this other stuff, and they may not understand what you're talking about when you say when you lose one, you lose 4. You know, that kid's playing offense, defense, every special team. You know, it's a completely different animal. So how does that affect your off-season planning and how you do spring, and, you know, you're sharing athletes? I mean, how do you go about your off-season?
Off-season, you know, it's difficult trying to do things like outside of the school day. Like, we're very fortunate. Our administration is very sports oriented, so we're able to get them all in weight training every day. But, you know, our boys' basketball coach can't start basketball season until football's over with. He's only got like two guys that don't play football. So we know as soon as football season's over with, those guys are going basketball. And I'm also the head track coach. So there's only like 5 or 6 guys that don't run track or throw shot and discus that play football, you know. And so it makes the off season a little bit challenging as far as trying to get some skill work or some individual work, but we try to work it in wherever we can between, you know, if the boys basketball team's got late practice because we only have one gym, we might can get them out there to throw a few routes beforehand, but you got to make sure you're very careful because you don't want to hurt them before a basketball game or anything. And same thing with track. But it makes it different. Spring, talking about spring football, you know, we hadn't done spring until the last 2 years. We did it because we were changing from the wing tee to more of a spread look. You have to be creative on how you work it around track because all your major skill guys are running track. You know, we started it last year, the week before state, so all the young guys and those that didn't run track got individualized work while those skill guys were still working on trying to win a state championship, and then brought them in for 4 or 5 days. And, you know, I thought that sort of propelled us onto the off season a little bit during the summer, but you just have to be, again, flexible and be creative with how you get your work in. But, you know, our guys, they all want to win state championships in football and basketball and track. So they're all willing to work it out and work with you.
Yeah,
the coaches are all willing to work.
Oh, absolutely. And it's just so refreshing, to hear that when the smaller school programs, and Warren County is one of the smallest schools in the state, isn't it?
Yes, sir. We're in the top 4, or bottom 4, I guess. I think last reclass number, I think we had 181. We're down to about 160 now. We had a big graduating class. I think it's Central Talbotton, Glasscock, us, and one more. I can't think. We're the bottom 4 football playing schools in the state. We're all under 200 kids. So,
and that's a challenge within itself.
It is, definitely is.
You can't do things like everybody else does. You can't just say, oh yeah, we're going 7-on-7 tournament. Yeah, we're going to do this because so and so does it, or we need to be doing this. You can't. You have to be creative and flexible in that situation because you have to do what's best for your program and your kids.
Definitely. You walk in our school building, you turn down one hallway, and that's the high school. You turn down the other hallway, and that's the elementary school. And you go to the third hallway, and that's the middle school. We're all in one building. And so, trying to get the coaches in the building when you only have, I think we've got 13 high school teachers, and you're trying to, figure out how to get all the coaches in the building for all the different sports. You got some that are in the middle school, some that are in the elementary school, so trying to get them to do stuff during the day or different things. They all have different meetings after school. It's a challenge, but it's a rewarding challenge when you're able to pull it all together and be successful and see these young people have success on the field or in the classroom or at the next level. So it's worth the challenge. It makes every day exciting.
Oh, I'm sure there's not a single day that's the same when you're in a situation like that. Like you said, you have them tell you at the end of the day, 3 of them were throwing ice, and now you're out 12 football players.
Oh yeah, 100%. And
those 3 dudes playing 4 positions. That's 3, 4. Yeah, that's 12. Yeah, that's 12 spots you got to find to fix.
And people look at you crazy when your starting quarterback is also your starting strong side defensive end. And things like that. But you have to do those kinds of things in small schools. People that are always in big schools and never been in a small school would never understand the struggle. They would never get it. And, like you talk about, I hear you talk about young coaches not wanting to do this or not wanting to do that. In the small school, you're the field cutter, you're the painter, you're the laundry guy, you're the huddle guy. You're the janitor, the counselor, you're a little bit of everything if you're going to get it done. So it makes it for an interesting day.
Well, and I think when you said you started out at Briarwood and there were just 2 of you, I thought right then, I was like, well, that's how you learn. Because, there's no better, it's not like you can, hey, man, who didn't do the laundry? And the guy asking the question knows that it ain't him. And you can't turn around and point to anybody else because there's just 2 of you. And I think every young coach ought to have to coach in a smaller classification at some point in time early in their career just to appreciate, what you just said. There's just so much more that sometimes we take for granted at bigger programs. That stuff just gets done. And you're like, oh, I don't know who does the laundry for the practice clothes every day. They're just clean. Somebody's doing it.
Somebody's got to, it's one of those things where if everybody pitches in, it comes out pretty easy. But you had the experience of hiring a guy that's been in a bigger school, and he looks at you like crazy, like, hey man, I need you to start that laundry. And he's like, we just had a guy that's all he did. Not here, baby.
Well, that guy don't work here, doctor.
No, sir.
Matter of fact, that guy is running a bus route right now.
That's another thing people don't realize. Like, I've got 2 coaches on my staff that they run bus routes every day. And so, you practice after school, you got to schedule practice where you can get certain things done until those 2 position coaches can get back. And I'm the only guy with a CDL in the county that's a sub bus driver. So if somebody's out, Coach Simpson is driving the bus today. So it makes it interesting.
Oh
It's
yeah,
fun
and
though.
there's nothing wrong with that. Yeah, I remember Coach Bell told me years ago when he went into administration that the thing he liked most about it is every day was different. And he liked that. I don't, because I'm TISM, and I want everything to be the same every day. And if anything disrupts my little universe, it spins me into a world of prescription medication and counseling that I just can't deal with. But I guess that's why I never was a head coach at a small school, or, wasn't much of a head coach the 1 year I was at the football level. But man, it's just, it's just amazing to me what you guys have to deal with. And then, you get out there and see you guys at the OTA this summer, and that quarterback was big and beautiful and ran, and I'm like, good Lord. And then sure enough, y'all spun around and he's the 5 technique or playing 4-eye. And I'm like, good Lord.
Yeah.
And he was good at that too. I mean, it wasn't like, he was better at one than the other. He was equally talented at both positions, and you couldn't have two more different positions requiring different skill sets. But like you said, that's just what you have to do.
Yeah, that's just part of it. And I'll tell you the other thing that's great about small schools that people miss out is the relationships are so much better, because they don't go talk to this coach or that coach because there ain't a whole bunch of coaches for them to go talk to. They're going to come talk to you. So you get to be really close with everybody because you know everybody in the school. So it makes the day interesting. It makes the day fun.
Well, and it's a big family environment too, because I imagine you've got a lot of kids that are related to each other, or you're coaching their cousins, or you're coaching their little brothers, and being there as long as you have now, you've probably run into that a few times, and you get to know the family a lot better.
Oh yeah. I mean, there's so many sets of brothers and first cousins on the team, or somebody that's graduated was a older brother or a cousin, or and you can relate. Hey, especially with a lot of my coaches are from Warrenton, graduated from Warrenton, and are there to try to help those people, those kids make better decisions and get out of there or go wherever they want to go, get an education, come back and help the community. And so they know everybody and everybody's granddaddy, and they played with their uncles or their dads or whatever. So it makes it where those guys can't get away with anything, because one of my coaches knows some family member that they're going to call right there on the practice field and tell them what little Jimmy's not doing. So it's funny. It's good. It's cool, but it is close knit.
Well, what are some things, I mean, you've been doing it for a long time. What are some things about the Georgia high school game that's changed that you just never thought you'd see? I mean, whether it be rampant recruiting and NIL deals and all this other stuff. I mean, I imagine Warrenton, y'all probably got a pretty sporty NIL package over there.
Yeah, real sporty NIL. It's
y'all can get them. Y'all get them something from. Y'all can get them something from K-Mac.
Yeah, we can give them a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. That's about all we've got. But over the time, things that I thought that have changed, maybe like you said, NIL, a lot of the recruiting. Like, one of the good things about being in Warrenton is you don't really have to worry about recruiting because it's so far away from everywhere else. Nobody really come try to take your kids. But and you don't have a whole lot of move-ins. I would say the biggest thing that I see is now, from when I first got in it to now, is the pressure I feel like on the kids for scholarship, whether it's coming from the parents or the community or whatever. When I first got into it, kids played because they just wanted to be out there with their friends from school. They loved the game. And if a college scholarship came along as part of it, that was great, and now it's the pressure of, I need to play this position because I want a scholarship, or if I don't get these stats, I'm not going to get a scholarship. And you try to get people to understand that colleges are going to find you if you can play. Doesn't matter what you play and what your stats are. If you can play, they'll find you. But I feel like that pressure from parents on the kids more so than the coaches has changed the game a little bit and changed the way kids look at it a little bit. But, one of the good things I think that's changed is technology. I remember, having to go trade those VHS tapes on Saturday morning, and now You can do it at the push of a button, and there's so much technology to help you break film down and things. But that's also a drawback. You know, I learned a lot of football standing at the Golden Pantry in Sparta talking to Chris Kelly on a Saturday morning, or, you know, meeting a coach somewhere along the side of the interstate to trade film. I think that's changed, and I think it's not necessarily for the better.
Well,
but other than,
go ahead.
I was gonna say, other than that, I mean, football is still football. It's about blocking and tackling and running and outscoring your opponent. But you know, the technology of trading film so much now, everybody's got every film. You have to assume they've seen every game. So the days of, I'm not going to show something for a couple of weeks before I play somebody, you know, and them not knowing about it, that's gone. So if you don't want somebody to see it, you better not put it on film anywhere.
Yeah, because especially if it's a trick play, your kids might put it on the ground, showing people.
Oh, yeah.
And you know, and people look. I mean, people, there are coaches on staff that they've got guys. That's just what they do, even at the high school level. And what you said about the scholarship thing, that if it floors me that the average everyday person can't understand, watching to what the college football universe has turned into. They can't understand the trickle-down effect of your child might have been an FCS guy. He's probably now a D3 or NAIA guy now because of the transfer portal, because of all the movement, because of all the exposure. It's just not very realistic to me. And the average everyday person, I noticed, they don't think that way. They're like, oh, my kid's good, or my kid's good here, or my kid's good in this region. And I'm like, your kid is one of 5 million his age, you know, in the country that plays the same position.
100%. And the big thing is trying to convince a parent that, hey, this school is offering your child some sort of money to come play football. That might be the best you get. Don't keep walking by thinking the bigger one's coming, because with everything you're talking about, the trickle down, it's probably not. You know, take what you can get. If if you got hope or whatever, you can afford to cover the part that's not covered, take it. But also, it's like you try to tell the kids sometimes, use the user. They're using you to win football games. They're using you to make money for them, and they're willing to give you a free education. Take it.
Absolutely. Coach, I've been telling kids that for years. They're going to use you. You use them to get that paper.
Exactly.
Because as soon as you break your leg or tear your knee up or something happens, they're going to drag you off and put another one out there that looks just like you.
Yeah.
And that has never changed and won't ever change.
Nope. 100%. 100% accurate. That's unfortunate. And the big thing that I think kids and parents both miss right now is that when you get to that next level, it's not just a game anymore. It's a job. It's 7 days a week, 365 days a year, because that guy that's coaching you is able to feed his family based on how you perform. So maybe you can't go up there and decide you don't want to practice today and get mama to call in for you. It don't work that way anymore.
Yeah, Coach, I ain't going to be able to practice today. I ate some chicken nuggets the other day. I got the doo-doo virus.
Yeah.
And that cat is making $1.2 million a year to coach a position. He ain't gonna lose his country club membership because your little tail don't want to come to practice. That ain't gonna happen.
Nope.
And trying to get these kids these days to understand that they're in a competition every day in the classroom and on the ball field with everybody in their generation is they look at you like you're speaking a foreign language or from another planet. And I'm like, dude, you're not competing just against the guy that's behind you or, that you want to get, first team reps with that's ahead of you here at this school. You're competing with everybody in the state, in the country, and y'all are competing for very limited resources.
Yeah, they don't get that. It's just, you try to tell them just because you're the best one here doesn't mean that you're automatically going to get a Division I scholarship. And you can be extremely good if you don't take care of business in the classroom. You're going to be what I call the hometown legend. You're going to be the guy that's walking around at how great you were, and everybody tells you how great you were, but you didn't go because of you shoulda, coulda, woulda, and you're gonna find somebody to blame. So they got to take care of it in the classroom and on the field, and that's the part that gets missing sometimes.
Well, those relationships that people build over years, who are some of the guys over the years? You mentioned Chris Kelly. Who are some other guys in that area that you just always enjoy talking to when you swap film, or you see out there in the middle of the field and you want to beat their brains in when the game starts, but you enjoy talking to them before and after the game and off season? Who are some of those guys for you?
Well, I mean, like we mentioned, Chris is a great dude. I think, he didn't get enough credit for what he does over at Glasscock. Don Norton's another guy. Don's my guy. He does a great job down in Johnson County. You always enjoy talking to him. He's always got some kind of story, whether it's hunting or fishing or whatever, but he's always got something to say, and he does a really good job with his kids. Enjoy playing them. It's always going to be a tough ball game. Alex Bradford over at Washington Wilkes right now is doing a great job. He's a young guy, but he's way more knowledgeable than his years, and he's always going to have his team ready. You're always going to be in a fight, but at the end of the day, he's a really good dude to talk to and hang out with. But I've had some guys I've been fortunate enough to work with. Like I worked with Papa Wynn and Coach Winslet, and learned a lot. I could sit there and talk to that guy forever. But football wise, and Bill Young, I don't know if you know Bill or not. He used to be at Jones and at Baldwin. Back in the day, he worked for me at GMC after he retired. And, just from sitting there and listening to those two guys talk about football and the way things were when they were coaching and playing, and some of the things they've been through that have really prepared me and opened my eyes to things that I never expected to see as a head coach. But because I talked to them, I learned, I knew it was coming, or I was prepared for it a little bit. But, there's a lot of great coaches in our area. Coach Homskis over at Lincoln does it the right way. I think James Leonard up at Aquinas does it the right way and is a great guy to talk to. So our little pocket of the world up near Warren County has got a lot of really good football coaches in the area and around there. And a lot of guys you could just sit with and carry on conversations and learn a lot and laugh a lot. But some of the stories, I tell everybody we should be able to write bestsellers as head coaches.
Oh,
stories we hear.
There ain't no doubt. I enjoyed getting to visit with you guys this summer when we were up there at Putnam, and I was so jealous that y'all were close enough that y'all got to go home every night, and we were staying up there in the gym the 2 nights we were there, and I was like, man, I'm getting too old for this. I wish I was going home with somebody today, with some team. Maybe they'll adopt me and let me come home with them, bring me back tomorrow.
The year before, we stayed in the gym, and I tried to warn you, the lights weren't going to go out, and it was going to be about 40 degrees in there.
And you ain't never lied.
That's why we didn't stay year 2.
Coach, everything you said was straight facts, and it wasn't that I didn't believe you. I just didn't want to. I was like, please don't let that be true. And sure enough, those lights didn't go off, and it was cold, and I went to Walmart the next day and walked straight in there and got me a fleece blanket. And my wife was like, well, that's your fault. You should have taken more stuff with you. And I was like, well, I thought I had enough, but I was wrong. I'm not used to sleeping in a meat locker. But it was nice. They put us up there, and that was cool. And it was good to get to see everybody. And like you said, getting to stand around and see guys you hadn't seen in a long time and share stories and just, understand everybody's got problems. There's just different kinds of problems.
And as much as I hated camp as a player and a coach early on in my career, I miss it now. I think it did make teams and kids and coaching staffs much better. That just bonded. And I know y'all talking about doing the talentless talent show or whatever. Those kinds of things that, because of the scheduling, like you mentioned earlier, just going by the wayside, are things that I think our kids actually need to be able to get away from mom and daddy and unplug from technology and have that time bonding with teammates and coaches. But yeah, that's gone now because of the way the schedule sets up.
Yeah, we had the No Talent show for sure, and that was it's like you said, it was fun, and it was good to see the kids in a different, kind of in their own element, and they don't really have. We take up cell phones, let them have them at certain times. which they're used to that because that's what we do. And they're not allowed to have them at school. And in 9 weeks, I hadn't seen a cell phone, and it's shocking to me. And they just don't get them out. And it's just neat to see the kids in a different environment like that and do stuff like that. And it's just cool to me. So what are some things that you might tell a young aspiring coach that's out there listening that might think he wants to go in this profession, or he may be thinking about making a move, or, coming to the state or moving somewhere within the state?
I would probably say the biggest thing is don't get caught up in chasing the title too early. I moved quite a few times in my first 5 years trying to chase the coordinator title, the head coach title. I happen to probably move some places I shouldn't have, but it allowed me to learn, but that doesn't always happen. So I would say a young aspiring coach, take those opportunities from those older guys to learn the different things, because there's a lot that goes on that I feel like head coaches that have never been in places where they've had to wash the laundry or paint the field, they just think that it gets done. Organizing the pregame meal, that kind of stuff, that's all lost and becomes just totally confusing if you've never got to do it. So just take it step by step. Don't try to rush it. Because if you can do the job, I feel like people are going to find you and hire you. And so just don't rush it, but also focus on relationships with administrators, other coaches, and especially the kids. I think those things will take you a long way in this business, and how you treat kids and how you treat others. It's going to take you a lot further than maybe the wins and losses sometimes will.
Well, Coach, you've always treated me like gold, and I appreciate our friendship, and it was so good to see you over the summer, and I appreciate you coming on and sharing your story with us.
Not a problem. I appreciate you having me. And like I say, I've been following you for a long time, from way back in the Vent days when you were a man of constant sorrow, and you tried to, I always tried to find out where the jobs were going to be when I was chasing, and now I always look to make sure mine's not on there. So I appreciate all you do for us, and thank you for having me.
Season 7 of Sun Coaches Podcast is proudly brought to you by Titan Sensor. Season 7